Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join before we get started. So please bear with me. And while we wait, I want to encourage people to follow me on Twitter at New Pos Blog. Also, I encourage you to follow me on Facebook at New Possibilities. If you are into reading great books by great Black authors, I encourage you to follow our Facebook page, Reading as Activism. We meet on the last Saturday of each month. Our next meeting is on the 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that you can join us. We will be discussing this book by Trevor Noah entitled Born a Crime. So I encourage you to like that page and to attend our meetings. We meet by Zoom. So you can join us from anywhere in the world. Just bear with me one second. Shout out to John Pro. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to wait just a few minutes. Again, I want to encourage you, if you are unfamiliar with this channel, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel and support my channel. Like the video, to everyone that's watching, I encourage you to like the video so that way we can spread word about this channel. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers, and I know that with your help, we can do so. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this live stream. Shout out to Dave Bowman. Shout out to Def Rocker. Thanks for tuning in. So let's get right into it. So I'm sure by now, most of you have heard about what has happened. Just bear with me. I want to make sure that this video doesn't play. So you all know that Robert Aaron Long of Woodstock has been accused of killing 8 people in 3 shootings at Atlanta area spas. He's been charged with 8 counts of murder. And what he did is he targeted these spas, and most of the victims were Asians. And people have been raising the question of whether or not this is a hate crime. So you have people who have been talking about this issue, about hate crimes being directed against Asian Americans. And I will post links to all these stories in the description box so that you can read these stories for yourself and judge them for yourself. It says that the victims in Atlanta were Asian women. And then there was another area in Ockworth where other people were killed. 2 victims were killed there. There were 2 other victims who were white. A man was injured and he's in stable condition. Now, this accused man has claimed that he has some kind of sexual addiction, and that's part of the motivation behind him lashing out and killing these people in order to get rid of the temptation to frequent these types of facilities. That's what he claims. That's, his excuse. And I'm going to show you another article that deals with this from a religious perspective, that talks about this case from a, like in terms of dealing with religious extremism. So people have been raising the question of whether or not this is a hate crime. Like, so far, the authorities are saying that there's no definitive proof that this is a hate crime yet. So right now they're, not openly saying that this is a hate crime, even though most of the victims were Asians. And you see this a lot when these types of crimes happen, when you have these white terrorists, and that's exactly what they are. When they kill Black people, for instance, or Jewish people or Muslims, first they try, the authorities try to, refrain from referring to it as a hate crime, when in all actuality, that's more likely than not what it is. So this man has been arrested. He's been charged with 4 counts of murder, 1 count of aggravated assault. and this goes into detail. And it talks about, this article talks about how the number of anti-Asian hate incidents has risen significantly. It cites a report, from Stop AAPI Hate, which revealed that nearly 3,800 incidents were reported over about a year during the coronavirus pandemic. And most of those attacks were directed at women. And this is very significant, the fact that there's been a spike in these hate crimes against Asians after this, corona pandemic. Because people have been blaming the corona pandemic on Asian people, and that has resulted in a lot of people lashing out and being hateful towards Asians. And the sad thing is, you had the former president of the United States basically stoking this fear and hatred towards Asians by referring to this virus as the China virus, as Kung flu, and all that kind of stuff. And you have a lot of people piling on and joining the hate bandwagon against Asian people. And we know that Asians have been victims of discrimination in this country for many years. We all are familiar with the internment camps that were imposed during World War II, where Asians, Japanese in particular, were herded up and put in these basically concentration camps in America. And we know that they've been subjected to discrimination, segregation, and all that kind of stuff as well. And so you have an article right here that talks about, and I'm not going to go into detail about this article, but it basically talks about how this extreme evangelism played a role in the killing of these Asian workers in Georgia. Because of all this guilt tripping, this guy felt so guilty and so evil for, being tempted by, these women at the spas and all that kind of stuff, that he felt the need to lash out in order to suppress or to deal with his temptation. He claims that he has sexual addiction, as I mentioned earlier. And this article just talks about the, fundamentalism and how it impacts and, affects people like him, like Robert Aaron Long. So I encourage you to check this out. And the funny thing is about this whole thing is that people are, real quick to condemn religious extremism when it comes from Muslims. And many people know that I'm a Muslim, but people are quick to condemn, Muslims, those fanatics in the Muslim community, but they are not willing to condemn fanatics that produce people like this person. They're not willing to condemn fanaticism when it's coming from white Christians. And they're not willing to call this stuff what it is, terrorism or hate crimes. You don't see they are reluctant to refer to white men as terrorists. But if this had been, a Muslim doing this stuff, it would have been immediately labeled as some kind of terrorist attack. And again, they're reluctant to call this racist, a racist attack as well. So I want to also deal with the way the police have responded to this incident. You had this Georgia sheriff basically downplay this stuff, by talking about how this guy had a quote unquote bad day. He's concerned about the kind of day that this person had, more concerned about that than being concerned about those 8 innocent people who were killed by this man. And that just shows you just like how law enforcement deals with white males in this society, how they deal with them as opposed to any other group. They have sympathy towards these white men that commit horrific crimes. They empathize with them. They sympathize with them. And they coddle them and stuff. And that's what you have here, where this man is referring to this as a bad day. This was an act of terrorism against a group of people, and it appears to be because of their race and their ethnicity. That had to have played a role. Because if it was just about some, sexual addiction, why didn't he go to some strip club where you had white strippers at? He specifically targeted these Asian women. And you have this sheriff who empathized with them. And it's not a surprise because, as this article points out, this sheriff, and I need to share, I didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen. Let me share my screen real quick. Just bear with me 1 second. So you had the sheriff, and this is the sheriff right here. And you see that he has these shirts that he was selling where it says COVID-19. It's like modeled after one of those alcohol shirts. I forget the brand, but it's modeled after one of those alcohol products. And it says imported virus from China. And again, we know that Trump constantly called this the China virus and, Kung flu and all that kind of stuff. And you had this sheriff actually selling these racist products. And we have to understand like how this really stokes, this racism and stuff. I'm going to, deal with this first. We have to understand because over 500,000 people in the United States have died from this virus. And I think 1.5 million people in America have been infected with this virus. So when you have lost your loved ones to a deadly virus, and then you have somebody blaming a group or category of people, it's not surprising that people would lash out at that group out of anger, out of frustration. So that's what you have. Yeah, so I wanted to point that out, just the difference in law enforcement reactions. I mean, they were able to take this man into custody without incident, without him having a bruise on his body or anything like that. But when it comes to Black people, they arrest Black people. They have killed Black people in many incidents where it's not even warranted. Like you had the brother Tamir Rice playing with a toy gun. The police arrived, and within seconds, that brother was killed. You had, Eric Garner, a Black man killed for selling loose cigarettes, and the list goes on and on. But when it comes to these white killers, they treat them with kid gloves, and that's, nobody should be brutalized. But this just shows you the bias in policing. And now following this incident, you have these articles like this one saying, how can Black people be strong allies to Asian Americans now? And it's my understanding that this right here was the title of the article, and then, the article title has been changed. And there are a couple of things that I want to say about that. But before I do, I want to just say this. Obviously I condemn all forms of racism, all forms of oppression, all forms of terrorism. I come out strong against it. And I do support allies and coalitions. Many of you who are familiar with my content know this very well. So this is not a question of me being against the Asian community or anything like that. I believe in coalitions with Asians, and there have been situations where, Black people and Asians have formed coalitions around issues that matter. I mean, we have to realize that we have a common enemy, and that common enemy is white supremacy. And I believe that we should unite with other communities that are victims of white supremacy. But with that being said, I believe that coalitions have to be based upon mutual respect and reciprocity. And I think that before we get to that point, we need to have a very real discussion about the relationship um, between the Asian community and the Black community. And many people are unwilling to have that discussion. They're unwilling to go down in the weeds and deal with the very real issues that must be addressed. Instead, they gloss over this stuff. Instead, they just run with slogans and they go with what's trendy. I mean, you have everybody talking about stop hate, and I support that fully. But we are not having the kind of dialogue that we need to have about the relationship between the Black community and the Asian community. This dialogue is long overdue. And so many people have tried to avoid this. You know, prominent civil rights organizations have avoided it. If we are to have any kind of real sustainable coalition that can produce change in this country, we have to deal with this relationship between the Black community and the Asian community in a real kind of way. Any kind of alliance has to be built based on that again, based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and exchange. Right now, unfortunately, it doesn't appear that we have that when it comes to the Asian community as a whole. Of course, you have some groups that work, that have coalitions with civil rights groups and work with civil rights groups. But I'm going to talk about some issues that need to be addressed. First of all, we have many situations involving the Asian community that have to be addressed. And if you could just bear with me a second, I'm going to pull up a couple of articles. The first thing that I want to address is the issue with some of these Asian store owners. And so let me go back and share my screen. So you all remember this story. This story about a store owner choking an African-American woman. And the video is on YouTube. And when this happened, I did a video about it. I did commentary on this. And when I get a chance, I will post the commentary in the cards to this live stream. So this happened in Charlotte at a beauty supply store. And, you know, after I, lay out a couple of these situations, I'm going to also address the overall issue of Black people in these Asian-owned beauty supply stores. So in this Charlotte beauty supply store, you had this Asian man who was kicking and choking a Black woman. And you see this photo right here. And this was all over allegations that this woman was allegedly stealing something. So because she allegedly stole some eyelashes, according to this article, or according to the store owner, he felt that it was appropriate to kick this woman, choke this woman, and you see this Asian woman actually participating in this assault against a Black woman. And the thing that makes this even more egregious is the fact that these businesses, these Asian-owned beauty supply places, they are in Black communities. These businesses literally get rich off of Black dollars. But this is how some of these people choose to treat African Americans. with complete and utter disrespect, even though African Americans are the ones enriching these people. And that's another thing. Why are we so dependent on Asians to provide us with beauty products? Why is it that we don't own and control beauty supply places in our community? And why are we buying? Why are our sisters buying foreign hair from foreign people? And that's a whole nother discussion. But you had this situation here. You had another situation where this Asian beauty supply owner punched a Black woman in the face. And this is, the name of that shop was Anna and June's Beauty Supply in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we know about Tulsa, that's where Black Wall Street is, but here you have a place that was the home of Black Wall Street now having, these Asian-owned stores where some of these Asians treat Black people like trash. This woman was punched in the mouth in front of her 3-year-old son and another toddler. And so you can read this article. I will post a link to this article in the description box as well. But these are the situations that we're talking about, where these Asians have no respect for Black communities. And I'm not saying all of them or most of them, but a significant number of them don't. And you see that in these examples of these Asian owners assaulting Black people, even though Black people are the ones enriching these people. And you don't even just have that problem. You have the situation where they literally follow Black people around in stores, assuming that they're trying to steal something. These are the types of issues that have to be addressed. And then you had this situation in New York involving this former officer, Peter Liang, where he killed a young Black man. And he was convicted of manslaughter. But guess what? When this officer killed this Black man, it was the Asian community that was rallying behind and supporting the Asian officer who killed the young Black man. And I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from this article. It talks about how you had these Asians come out and support this killer. They were chanting, "No scapegoat, no scapegoat," and carrying signs with the same type of message. And there were people from New Jersey and Connecticut that came to participate in this rally. And the prosecutors had described the officer's behavior as reckless when he fired a gun inside a public housing complex at Akai Gurley. That's the young Black man who was 28 years old, killed by this Asian cop. So, there was a verdict in the case, and he was found guilty. Let me see if they have the details of the charges. He was found guilty of manslaughter in the killing of Mr. Gurley. And the thing is, after being convicted, because of all this pressure that was put down on the prosecutors and all that kind of stuff, this guy ended up having a very light sentence. It says that New York Police Department officer Peter Liang was spared jail time Tuesday for fatally shooting Akai Gurley in a Brooklyn housing project. So he was given 5 years probation and 800 hours of community service after killing a Black man. And he would, if it wasn't for the work of these Asian, the Asian community coming out and supporting this man, he more likely than not, probably would have had to serve some jail time. So these are the kind of issues that we need to discuss if we're going to be talking about alliances with the Asian community. And I don't think that it's fair to put the burden on Black people. When you have these killings of Black people at the hands of the police, or you have these terrorist attacks against the Black community, like that situation in South Carolina, where 9 innocent people were preyed upon while they were praying. When you had those types of incidents, I'm not aware of any article saying how can the Asian community help out the Black community. I'm not aware of people putting pressure on the Asian community to the same degree that you have articles like the one I showed you earlier asking how the Black community can help out. So it's all about reciprocity. That's all that I'm saying. And then you have situations like this, where you had this Asian man telling a Black YouTuber that this is a nigger-free zone. Like, this Black man is walking in this community, and this Asian guy tells this Black man that this is a nigger-free zone, meaning no Black people can be in this area. And hopefully you're able to hear this. I'm going to play this little video right here. Let me turn it up.
Why are you coming over here? I just want to see what you guys do. Why is it your business? It's my home. Okay, mine too. Why are you taking pictures of it? I live in Scottsdale. Why are you taking pictures of it? Yeah, why are you taking pictures? Well, you know what? We had problems. I don't care. You don't know me. Why are you taking pictures of me? And I don't know you. Do you know a lot of white men are doing racist things in this world, sir? No. You don't know that? You're not aware? I'm a racist. You are a racist. I'm a racist. Okay, that's fine. Okay. So what's your point? Why are you here? Because this is a no-nigger zone. Not really. Oh, is it? Not really. Tell me. It's not no nigger zone. I'm here. And what I'm about to do, I do. I stay here. What I'm about to do, me and my friend, we're about to record our video. Okay. And you're not going to do a motherfucking thing about it. You're not going to do a motherfucking thing. I don't want to hear you say that. You're just not going to do another motherfucking thing. So, as y'all see, you can't get the cameras. It doesn't mean shit. I'm about to record my video. This bitch ass nigga not going to do anything. And let you try to touch me. Let you try to touch. No. Oh, I wouldn't touch you. Let you. You already.
All right, so you saw enough of that. So here you had this Asian guy telling this Black man that this is a no nigger zone. Like, he's out there, the brother's out there with some other people doing some videos, and you had this guy confronting them, telling them they can't do videos here, and basically saying that this is a no nigger zone, meaning no Black people should be here. These are the issues that need to be addressed. And then not only in this country do you have issues between Asians and Black people, in places like China. They thought that it was appropriate in China to bring in the New Year by having actors in blackface, as pointed out in this article. And I did a video about this as well. These are the kind of issues that have to be addressed if we're going to talk about building coalitions between Black and Asian communities. It says in this article from NBC, Chinese state TV included dancers in blackface portraying Africans during a national broadcast as Asia welcomed the Lunar Year of the Ox. And it goes on. And the thing that makes this so messed up is that China is exploiting the resources of Africa right now. In many ways, some have said that the Chinese are acting as the new imperialists and colonialists in Africa. So you have that situation. And then you have other situations involving discrimination against Black people in China. You know, you had this article from CNN that talks about discrimination against Africans in China going back decades. And, you know, so there were allegations that Black people were targeted for coronas related discrimination in China. And this article goes into detail. It says many Africans were subject to forced coronavirus testing and arbitrary 14-day self-quarantine, regardless of their recent travel history. And scores were left homeless after being evicted by landlords and rejected by hotels. And I remember reading a report about an African being attacked for trying to date an Asian woman in one of these countries. And I think it may have been China. So you have situations like that. And then we all know about the situation involving LaTosha Harlan's. Let me zoom this. You know, this is a horrible case. And this can go and it should have been in the category with all those store owner type of situations, where a 15-year-old Black girl was killed by a store owner, a Korean American convenience store owner. That owner was charged with voluntary manslaughter. And although the maximum sentence was 16 years, that person got 5 years of probation. And people say, like as pointed out by Wikipedia, this whole incident contributed to the 1992 Los Angeles riots. So you had that situation. And then the last example that I want to talk about is a lawsuit against Harvard to challenge their affirmative action policies. Now, this lawsuit was primarily organized by, one of these white conservatives, but the lawsuit was filed on behalf of Asian Americans. Basically, they were saying that affirmative action programs discriminate against Asians. And, they were saying that it benefits, African Americans and Latinos at the expense of Asians. That's what the lawsuit was about. This lawsuit threatened affirmative action, not just at Harvard, but around the country. And we know that affirmative action has been a program that is not, it's not a quote unquote handout. It's not a quota or anything like that. It's a program that takes race into consideration as a factor among many factors that are considered when people are applying for admission to universities. So, and that affirmative action program makes it possible for people like myself to be able to go to college, to be able to get advanced degrees, and to be able to advance in life, period. But you had this group of Asians that wanted to slam the door of opportunity in the faces of African American people and Latino people. These are the kind of issues that need to be addressed. Now, I know that there were some Asian groups that had spoke out against this lawsuit, had helped join the fight against this lawsuit, and those people need to be commended. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. And So somebody said who's benefited from affirmative, Black people benefit from affirmative action. Many Black people benefit from it. And, for somebody to suggest otherwise, they're just uninformed. Of course, you have other groups that benefit from it as well, but many Black people benefit from affirmative action, including myself, and many of the people that I went to school with benefited from it. So, I just hate when people raise that question to suggest that because others benefit from it as well, that is not of any use to the Black community. So those are the types of issues that we really need to address if we're going to have a sincere discussion about alliances between Black and Asian people. Again, I support coalitions. I support fighting against all forms of racism and white supremacy, including fighting against Asian discrimination against Black people. So I support that, but let's have a relationship based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and a fair exchange. Black people shouldn't be stormtroopers for a group of people that aren't on the front lines in our struggle. And again, there are plenty of Asians who do participate in the struggle for Black, in our struggle. Like you have Asians that are part of civil rights organizations that participate in these marches against police brutality, but we need more reciprocity. And we need Asians to confront these very real issues that I laid out in this video. And I'm not going to go back and forth about affirmative action. I already laid out my case, and it does. So, so I want to thank people for tuning in. I'm going to look through your comments to see if there's any points that I want to address that people have brought up. And I want to encourage people to support this channel. Thumbs up the video. I do have super chats so people can donate to the channel so that we can improve the quality of the channel. And I appreciate those who have supported the channel, by watching, by liking the videos, and by donating to the channel. So I'm going through comments now. I'm trying to see if there are any comments that I would like to respond to. So somebody said they are the reason for COVID and Trump let it spread here, period. I mean, we know that the virus started in China. According to these reports, it started in Wuhan, China and stuff. But you can't blame all Asians for a virus that many thousands or hundreds of thousands and millions of people had no control over. They didn't create the virus or anything. There's no definitive proof that Asians created the virus and deliberately infected the world population. There's no definitive proof of that. And you are correct when you say that Trump let it spread here, because he didn't, he did have restrictions against people traveling from China and all that kind of stuff, but he did not impose the necessary restrictions in the states to limit the spread of this virus. He didn't take it seriously. He kept talking about how it would just magically go away. He kept downplaying the importance of wearing masks and the importance of closing businesses at the height of this virus. So because of his failure to act, many thousands of people have died in the United States. people need to direct more anger towards him than anger towards the Chinese people. And I understand like the need I see some people talking about how we can't win alone and all that kind of stuff. I agree. Like we need to have coalitions. We are like 13% of this population. If we are to get legislation passed around civil rights issues, we have to partner with others. It's just undeniable. We have to do it. But, that partnership shouldn't be one-sided. Like too often we have these partnerships where Black people end up essentially carrying the water for other groups of people. So somebody said, why am I concerned about Asians? When people say stuff like that, and I pointed out my concerns with the alliance, as you all have pointed out. But when I hear people say, why should people be concerned about Asians or what's happening to them, I think that's a display of ignorance. I think that's a display of intolerance and just insensitivity. Here you have a situation where 8 human beings were killed. All life is precious. No group of people should be subjected to racist attacks simply because of the color of their skin or because of their nationality. How can you advocate against racism when it comes to Black people, but be okay with racism against other people? How can you ask for people to sympathize with Black people when Black people are victims of police brutality, victims of racist attacks from white vigilantes, like in the situation of Ahmaud Arbery? How can you expect anybody to sympathize with your situation, with our situation, if we're not willing to sympathize with others, if we're not willing to have compassion for other human beings? So let's see. Yeah, and Def Rocker pointed out a great point dealing with Malcolm X and his alliance with a Japanese woman who helped him out. And when you look at groups like the Black Panthers, they worked with Asian groups and Asian leaders and stuff like that. And they were inspired by Mao Zedong, who was the chairman in China at the time when China was a revolutionary country. They were inspired by a lot of the things that Chairman Mao actually said. There's a book that the Black Panthers used to carry around and sell, and that's the Red Book. People that are familiar with the Panthers know this. They know that many of the activists during the 60s were in solidarity with the Vietnamese people during the Vietnam War. So there's a long history of an alliance with various Asian communities. Okay. Let me see if there's some other comments that I want to respond to before I tune out. Yeah, so Highly Favored mentioned a great point about how we need to discuss Asians giving back to our communities. And, that's a very valid point because you have a lot of Asians in predominantly Black communities being enriched by those Black communities, but not employing Black people and not donating to the Black community. I think that any business, regardless of the race or ethnicity of that business in the community, should support the community. Not, by employing people in the community and by donating to worthy causes in the community. And that goes for some of these Black businesses too. Just because a business is Black doesn't mean that we should be satisfied with that alone. They should give back to the Black community and help circulate those dollars within the Black community. So somebody said, I can't take anecdotal evidence to mischaracterize a whole group of people. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that in general. I agree in general with that principle. But these things you can't ignore. All these different examples are things that can't be ignored. There are real issues between Black and Asian communities. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had situations like with these quote unquote riots that have occurred where Asian businesses were targeted because of how they treat Black people. It's a serious issue because of how some of them, and I'm not going to say all of them or most of them, but a significant number of them mistreat Black people. And that's something that we need to deal with. Oh, Def Rocker said he saw a YouTube video where Chinese people were making racist remarks about the Black Panther movie. I haven't seen that video. I'm going to look for it later. Yeah, and when I cited that case example, I'm not saying that those plaintiffs in that case represent all the Asian community or not. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying it is significant that you had a group of Asians behind that lawsuit challenging affirmative action. Yeah, we do need to get behind our differences, but we need to address our differences as well. Bonafide 1970. Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know right away when I post new content on here. And I want to hear from you. Do you think that Black people should support the Asian community? Why or why not? So with that, peace and blessings. Have a great weekend.